Did you know a rainbow is actually a complete circle, but we mostly from the ground see only a part of it? Why are we discussing rainbow today? Challenge is we are doing a rainbow colors memory game. In this game called the Rainbow Colors Memory Game, we remember the sequence as WebCure, but that is not what the sequence we want to test the memory on. So when a player selects on show sequence, it is going to show a particular order. I have tried my best to memorize or maybe cheated, and now I'm doing a playback. So I'm getting it all right. So it's finally this orange and the second color. Yay! So I'm sure this is going to be a lot of fun to make and play. So happy coding. Now, by now you have figured out that every time we want our program to remember something for us, we have been coming here and using variables. We have started to use more and more variables for everything, but using 7 different variables or using a single variable to put the sequence, maybe a little bit of trick, but can be done. But what is definitely easier is use a list. The same thing is available in programming language. I know some of you may be using lists a lot, but for those who are not, I will give a little introduction. So if you come to this variable, these variables, they hold a single value. And when you need to hold something more, you can make a list. Now these list blocks they're there, but they're hidden. The moment you make a list, rainbow colors, see what happened. The moment you created the list, so many new blocks, coding blocks. Isn't it fun? And these blocks, they have everything that you need to work on your list. So for instance, when you want to add to a list, when you want to delete a list, when you want to start with a fresh list, delete all, to fetch the data from the list. So what it means, the list is already ready. And now you want to know what is the 4th item on the list. It may be overwhelming right now. You don't need to try to understand all the blocks at a time. As you start using them, as you start to find use of a block, you will start to learn more about them. The moment we have created a list, like a variable shows up, even the list had showed up right here. So if you want to see it, well, while coding, you will want to see it because you want to make sure your code is written right. But definitely for this game, you don't want the player to see the list. So you will hide it before you actually finish your game. We are going to start coding with the first block, that is the sequencing. We've taken 2 costumes. So initially it is going to display show sequence. And the moment the player clicks on it, we are going to switch it to sequencing now. And now what we want to do, we want to randomly figure out the sequence of it one at a time and keep adding it to the list. We are creating a variable called color picked for all sprites, and we are going to assign it set color picked to, we are going to assign color picked to pick random between 1 to 7. Now once this is picked up, we will go to the variables code block where we now have the list block. We are going to add the number or the color. For ease, let's just add the number itself, the sequence. So where is the sequence stored? It is stored in color pick. So we are going to add to the list color pick. Now, of course, we should initialize the list before we start. So in this initialization, we will do delete all, or let's do a delete all whenever sequencing now is clicked, because it should be a fresh one. Now, once we have added color pick, we want to keep doing it still all the 7 colors are picked up. Now, how do we do that? See, the complexity here is that when we say pick random, and you know this by now, that it can pick up the same number multiple times. But we want to show a unique sequence, like only once each color should show up. So that's something which you're going to learn now. We'll have to put a condition to check if it is on the list. We need a condition. So if else block. And what is the condition we are going to use? Let's look at this. Which one tells us if some item is on the list? Look at this block. It says rainbow colors which are list. Does it contain something? It's like a question. So does it contain 1? So it will either give us a false or a true. So we will put this inside this before adding. If it contains the value color pig, if it contains, we don't add it to the list. But if it does not contain, then we add it to the list. Now what we will do is let's take this code as our own created block. We are creating a block called color picker block. Now what do we do if it was already on the list? It means we need to choose another one. Now how do we choose another one? Now this is going to be really confusing for you. I will maybe leave this block as part of the coding challenge project. Now we want it to pick another block. So basically what we're saying that if it is not on the list, you add it. But if it is already on the list, you again run this entire block. So you're calling same block within itself. Isn't it fun? You will be learning more of this kind of programming as you continue to make fun and interesting projects. Colors we have to pick up. We have to pick up 7. So what do we need? Of course, repeat 7. And what do we call inside this repeat? The block we just created. And how do we test this code? We want to look at what is happening to our list. So we click on this. Now initially it is going to be delete all here in the code itself. You want to see this happening one by one instead of all 7 at a time. So what I will do, I will invoke it one at a time, okay, manually. So once I click on it, 5th color got added. Picking up one of these again because all 7 are already added here. What we're going to do, we are going to first show the sequence with this without the border. And once a color is selected, we will change it and show a costume with the border. So that means a broadcast should happen right here. Now, what do we broadcast here? Let's broadcast the number because it's 1 to 7. And we already have that in that variable color pig. So we'll broadcast color pig. So it will broadcast 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now for each of them, what we will do is we will say, when I receive, now what you're going to receive here, you're going to receive, when you're going to receive 1, what do you want to do? Initially your costume is 1, and when you receive 1, you switch costume to 2. And this is the only code which has to happen everywhere, just you change the number here. So do you know how we're going to do it? We're going to copy paste the code. I'm going to click on this code and on the keyboard do Command C because I'm on Mac. If you're on Windows, you'll do Control C. And then we come to Indigo and we do Command V or Control V. So our 7th one, we have not yet coded for it. First one, yes, do you see? It turned into the box color. So it is working. That means we can go ahead and duplicate this code for all of them. Now the trouble with copy pasting is that a lot of time folks forget to make the changes after copying. So for instance, there's a big chance that you will copy and you will forget to change the number. And what will happen? Then all the wrong ones will keep getting selected and you'll be like, it's not working. So what you have to make sure is you go back and confirm that for each of them, you have indeed the right message received. Now you can go ahead and test it once more. So now as the game starts, we have shown the sequence of the color and now the player has to click on playback and start clicking. And as soon as the person clicks, we should be able to check against the list if it is correct or wrong. If it is correct, you allow the player to continue. But if it is wrong, you can immediately show a message. Now let us decide the strategy on how we want the player to play. The player has to first click on this playback button and then select the order in which he or she remembers this was played in. So basically, we want the playback button to determine that now the playback is starting. Because when the show sequence is happening at that time, the player should not be clicking on these. When we need to control all this player action, what do we need? We need variables. So we are going to create a variable called playback time. And initially the playback time will be set to 0. And only when this sprite is clicked, we will set the playback time to 1. Now the action has to happen actually on the colors. So let's figure out how that code should work. Now, because it's going to happen on the sprite clicked, we are taking the event when the sprite clicked. We want this sprite to be clicked on 2 conditions. One is, of course, the condition that the playback is turned on. And for that, we already know how to use the operator. We will use the equal to operator. We'll use the variable playback time, and we'll check only when it is set to 1. We want to do this. And we also want to allow this to happen only for the ones which have not been clicked yet. How do we determine that? What we can do is we can only allow it to click, because once we had selected, remember we had put all those border boxes to them, costume 2. So we allow it to click only if it is costume 2. Now look at this very interesting operator coming in. So we are using an AND operator because we want 2 conditions. Now the first condition is playback time is 1. Now for the second condition, we are going to use costume number is equal to 1. So we'll use the same operator again. Now instead of playback time here, we will say costume number is 2, not 1. Only if playback time is 1 and costume number is 2, then when the sprite is clicked, what do we want to do? Now we want to check that it is right or wrong. Now to do that, the first thing we need to know is which one is being clicked. We need to know whether it is the first one, second one, third one, because only then we can verify it against that item on the list. So let's make another variables, playback counter. So when playback button is clicked, initially the playback counter will also be 0. And anything when it is clicked, the first thing we are going to do is we are going to change the playback counter by 1. After changing it by 1, we are going to check if this is the one which is selected on the list on that number. How do we do that? So we know what is our number clearly, right? This is like 1, 2, 3. We know which is the color number. And in the list, we can check what is the item in that list. So we want item playback counter. So if this is the first color we are checking, so we are going to check what is item 1 of rainbow's color. If that is equivalent, so let's look at our list. Yeah, you'll take a little bit of time to get this. So here it is number 7. And you will need to watch this tutorial till the end, otherwise you will miss out on a lot of important settings. So for instance, you saw we did the sequencing now, but playback time was already 1. We don't want it to be 1. So we want to say in the show sequencing sprite click, we want to set the variable playback time as 0 and playback counter to 0. Both should be set to 0 because now a fresh game is starting. So when we click on the sprite, we want to check if playback counter, that is 4th number of rainbow colors, what is the value. Now you can see here it is showing that item playback counter of rainbow colors is 1. So if we put a if condition, so we are checking if this value is equal to, for violet, 1. This we are hard coding. For indigo, we will make it 2. If this is same, it is correct. So we can maybe just for now say keep going. That means it is correct. If it is not, then we will have to put a, okay, since we need else also, let's use a if else. Start again or try again, however you want the game to be. Now we will have to copy this on all the blocks. And remember to make the change. Command C or Control C, go to the next one and paste it. Always remember that when you're gaming, these variables, if they're not set properly, they can really cause a lot of things to go wrong. For testing purpose, I had changed the black counter to 4 and I ended up copying that everywhere. Now, once we have this piece of code working and we know the playback is able to determine that when things are right, when things are wrong, now we need to take action. What happens when it's right, like all 7 are there? You want to play some music, you want to say congratulations. Now, how to determine that? Who knows that? The playback counter. That's what helps us determine that if all 7 are correct and are done. So we can keep that code in playback. So when the sprite click, after this, we can put, so there are 2 ways to do it. Until we can have a forever loop or we can have a wait until. So you've never used a wait until till now. We are going to wait until the playback counter becomes 7. You've used the first control wait many a times and you know it very well because it waits for a fixed number of seconds. But there is a wait until. So it's like it waits for a condition. So for example, in your day-to-day life, if you say that, there are 2 ways to say you will have lunch at sharp 1 o'clock. Or you can say that today my friend is coming, so I will have lunch once my friend comes. So basically you're going to wait until your friend comes. So here we're going to wait until the counter becomes 7. Once it becomes 7, we want to be able to change a backdrop and say it's a win or say it right here. So for now, that's what we will say. Now, if we want to play this game, it's a little distracting to see all these variables up. So let's put it out and check this. What we will do is, after the sequencing now is done, we will make another costume and call it your turn. So we can actually switch the costume to your turn. It waits until, and then it resets all the counters. So we will define reset game and we will call it here. Now reset game, what all should it have? All of this. Now the other thing we want to do is, when reset game happens, we want all these also to reset their costumes. See, whenever you're making a game, just don't code and submit, because you need a few people to play, because only then you can make out what are the things you left out. That's very important as somebody who is creating and coding a game. I have kept the rainbow as rectangular colored tiles, but your rainbow can actually look like a rainbow. Ta-da!